Perfect. Okay. Lovely. So, I mean, just to start, I was going to kick off with just some tips and tricks really on navigating the platform. And as we've got faculty and libraries on the call, I thought we'd probably start down at the bottom of the home screen. I don't know whether you've familiarized yourselves with this section here. For library staff, we've got the Counter 5 reports, which you are now able to download and monitor your institution's usage, which is great because previously you had to request usage from us, but now you can access that independently. And the great thing is it already has your account identification within that. So it's just a case of selecting the reports you want and the dates in which you wish to, just admitting somebody else in here, and the dates in which you wish to evaluate. We've also got the content reports. To me, this is a very detailed catalogue of all the content that we have on the platform. And like I said, it's quite detailed. So if it's a production, it will tell you the date the production was produced, the date it was placed on the platform, what themes, the directors, so forth. So it's really detailed catalogue of everything that we have on the platform. It's updated daily around 1 p.m. GMT just to reflect the content that's been added or removed from the platform. But we don't really kind of publish content daily. Probably weekly to weekly we are publishing new content. So if this was useful for you, I'd probably recommend that you probably print the report monthly, just so you've got an accurate account of what is on the platform. In terms of faculty and students, I definitely have a look in the help and support section just here. This is where you can find a range of support videos for higher education. These are videos which will help you surface content such as voice, movement, looking at post-dramatic theatre, Shakespeare, and so forth. So these are quite useful for faculty and students, really. There's also an area here which is definitely useful for students, and that's the content. This is where students can find examples on how they should cite resources on the platform in their work. So they'll see examples here, whether it be a production, filmed resources, or written resources. They've got examples on how to cite that in their work. In terms of navigating around the platform, you've got your main pillars at the very top. And you may have noticed series is a new category that's just been added up here. That wasn't there just over a month ago. So as I said, the development team are continuously enhancing the user experience. So you will see things change. Titles, all your productions, combination of audio and audiovisual, genres, all your different theatre styles, if you like. Lots of traditional styles, your satire, your history, tragedy, themes. Themes is a nice area really for perhaps English students as well as theatre students. It's broken down into courses, and there's many more tiles within these sections, as you'll see just here. You just need to select the all courses or the all forms, etc. All the forms are all the various theatrical forms. And then people, self-explanatory, all your kind of practitioners, actors, directors, composers. And then the brand new strand here is the series section, which is great because we have so many resources that are linked to a series, and without the series strand you would never know that it was part of a wider collection. So I'm so happy that this has been added, but you can see there's such a vast range of series down the left hand side there which you can filter. I also want to highlight the table of contents button. This is quite a nice way to surface content if you are looking for something specifically to enhance some of your lesson plans or to create, create a new scheme of work, or whether you're looking for support materials for students. Because what this does is it brings up all the content on the platform, but it breaks it down. So you have all your productions, you have video resources, which are things like interviews, e-learning videos. The written resources, they are all the resources that are designed for students. And then the teaching resources are teacher lesson plans and toolkits and so forth. We have just added this section along here, which again is brand new. And you are now able to filter content by production company, which you weren't previously able to do. Not only are you able to do it by production company, but you can do it by time periods. So if you're looking for resources from a specific time period, you can filter the content here. So that's the table of contents. And in terms of navigation, it's fairly self-explanatory. I mean, the search is very intuitive. If you were to type in dance, it would surface any content that has dance tagged in it, writing, etc. So it's very intuitive. Does anybody have any questions in regards to kind of navigating or in regards to any of the library section? No? Well, in that case, I will hand you over to Talia Rogers, who's the director of our higher education. And she will deep dive into some of the content for students and faculty.
Yeah, I thought I'd give you a quick whiz round. It's probably a good 10 minutes worth, if that's okay. It will be a kind of quite a whistle stop tour, but hopefully it'll give you a good idea. I think the first thing to say is we create, commission and curate materials at a variety of educational levels. So finding a way to navigate your own path through the collection on DT Plus is quite crucial, because obviously only you know exactly what's right for your own particular needs in a specific context. An example of two series operating at very different levels are firstly our collection of concise introductions, which is a kind of beginner's guide to many of the topics and practitioners on the courses that you teach. It's a bit like an unbundled textbook. We have about 150 of these 2,000-word introductions, some of which are available as audio files. They're all written by specialists. In fact, I think one of them is written by David Zinder, who I think is a professor emeritus of yours. So they're written by specialists. They're very accessible, but very authoritative and very readable at the same time. And many of them also contain playlists, which direct you to examples of productions and interviews which relate to the topic. And then secondly, for upper level undergraduates and graduate students, we have our 4x45 New Thinking About Performance series, which takes an in-depth look at current and topical issues for theatre and performance studies. One of the most recent ones is on performance and migration, for instance. So this is an audiovisual series consisting of 4 items per volume, which are filmed lectures, discussions, or interviews with practitioners and academics, and which aim to bridge theory and practice and shed new light on critical issues. So I wanted to sort of talk about those two series because they are very much at the either end of the spectrum in terms of educational level. And now I thought I'd turn to particular subject areas to give you an idea of the range of materials we have for each one. Obviously there are more, but this is a handful of examples. So post-dramatic theatre, I think probably the best full-length production we have to illustrate this field is called Negative Space by the European theatre company Reckless Sleepers. I don't know how well the sharing screen over Zoom is doing, because sometimes it can slow things down, but I hope you'll forgive us. So this is by this company Reckless Sleepers, and that is really ideal for thinking about experimental forms, non-text-based performance, and the devising process in particular. It's also really good for looking at interdisciplinarity, because their work mixes vocabularies from performance, dance, and visual art. And then alongside the show itself, we have a written piece, almost like an ebook really, called Making Post-Dramatic Theatre, a handbook of devising exercises, which collects together 15 chapters from various different companies who make work in this way, including Reckless Sleepers. And then there's also an interview with Mole Wetherall, who is the artistic director of Reckless Sleepers, in conversation with Nikki Woods from the University of Salford. And that interview gives really good insight into the company's history and aesthetics and so on. And then lastly on that, we have a highly illustrated and really beautifully designed book by the company themselves, which we licensed from them, called Discussing Negative Space, which charts the making of the show in some detail and how they collaborate and why they make the work they do. And then, as I mentioned, we have these concise introductions. So we have a concise introduction to the term post-dramatic theatre, which gives the kind of history and critical context of the term. And then there are other interviews with post-dramatic theatre makers such as Tim Etchells of Forced Entertainment and Matt Adams of Blast Theory and so on. And all of those interviews are chaptered into handy sections. We are also, if anybody is interested in this kind of work, we're in the process of licensing some full-length shows by Forced Ents, and they'll be on the site very soon, like within the next month or two, I think. So that's one area. The other area is, which I'm kind of grouping together, acting, movement and voice. So as well as specific genres of theatre, we also have a huge amount of what we might call how-to material, which provides detailed information and inspiration about theatre making practices. So starting with movement and beginning at the introductory level, we have concise written introductions to topics such as Jacques Lecoq, Butoh performance and mime. Again, all written by specialists and peer-reviewed and so on. And we have filmed interviews with some leading movement directors, such as ex-RSC director Struan Leslie, who talks about how body language can operate as a text in performance and how historical context informs movement decisions. And as with all of these interviews, this is chaptered, so you can hone in on a subcategory, such as physical vocabulary or gender and physicality or whatever. And then we have interviews which look at a specific play, such as one with Coral Messam on King Lear. She was the movement director on that play. And then for more advanced level classes, we have 2 filmed masterclasses in the Michael Chekhov Qualities of Movement Technique, which is part of the complete set of filmed Chekhov masterclasses. And these give you access to some of the preeminent Chekhov teachers in the world, and they're well worth a look if you're teaching actor training. Again, at an advanced level, we have a filmed lecture by Christina Rosa in our series 4x45, which is on neoliberalism and contemporary dance in Brazil, at the end of which she gives a lovely demonstration of the difficulties between Eurocentric and Afrocentric qualities of movement, between the verticality of ballet and the polycentrism of samba. And another fascinating project, which is relevant here, is the Donmar Warehouse trilogy of all-female cast Shakespeare plays. So actor Jackie Clune talks and actually gives a really interesting little demonstration in an interview about learning to walk like a man, taking up space, projecting a sense of entitlement and so on. And director Phila Deloyd talks about rehearsing movement as men in performance. And finally, we have a much loved frantic assembly warm-up, which includes 6 exercises for developing stamina and physical confidence. So that's a quick guide to some of our offerings for movement. For voice, we have 2 masterclasses by Barbara Houseman on developing your voice and bringing the text to life. We also have an interview with her where she talks about the transformative potential of language for both performer and audience, and how she divides a text into 3 components: structure, sounds, and words. We also have a concise introduction to Michel Saint-Denis by historian Colin Chambers, which includes a look at Saint-Denis' voice work, his emphasis on the relationship between the senses, particularly speech and movement, and the importance of vocal imagination. For a slightly less Eurocentric perspective, we have a documentary about kabuki by the legendary Leonard Pronko, which includes versions of kabuki plays and training sessions on vocal projection. And alongside all of this, we have many interviews with actors talking about the use of voice in developing a role. So you can search by character to see if there's something on the role they're working on, or just gather a sense of various different approaches to voice. And speaking of searching by character brings me to acting, on which we have a very broad and deep range of materials. You can browse by character, play, theme, even speech, to see our collection of audiovisual and written content and find something relevant. One of my personal favourites is a fascinating interview with the late Alison Hodge, who was a director, actor trainer and author, who speaks about her work with the breath and the spine, as well as energy, timing, space and touch. It's a really lovely interview. And then again, looking at our series of concise introductions, we have essays on acting, Henry Irving, Lee Strasberg, ensemble, actor training, Kathakali, David Garrick, Jacques Lecoq, Tim Crouch and mine, to name a few. And they're all written by people like Rose Wyman, Lola Cohen, Lawrence Stenlick and Robert Leach. And then moving on to directing, as well as many interviews with actors about their work on specific plays or roles, we also have interviews with directors such as Jatinder Verma, Nicholas Heitner, Peter Brook, Eugenio Barber and Yale Farber, where they speak about their work with actors, amongst other things. And we actually assembled a 20-minute montage from all of these interviews called Directors on Directing, which provides a really excellent introduction to the topic. Then we also have a filmed lecture by Sharon Karnicki on active analysis, who's, as you probably will know, is a notable Stanislavski expert, and she gave a lecture on active analysis for 21st century actors, which works really well alongside Bella Merlin's excellent documentary, Active Analysis in Rehearsal, which demonstrates how it works in practice. And then we have comparative compilations of soliloquies from some of our productions, such as Lady Macbeth's The Raven Himself is Hoarse and Hamlet's To Be or Not to Be, which show the markedly different interpretive approaches that actors and directors have taken over the years. In terms of deep dives into the work of specific directors, we have Anne Bogart's wonderful lecture entitled The Vital and Energetic Role of the Audience, which we filmed at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama in 2019 during a symposium on her work there. It's a really fabulous lecture. And at that same event, we also filmed an interview with her by Head of Acting Jeffrey Coleman, where she spoke about using the Viewpoints actor training method and her theatre making processes. So the lecture is more philosophical and the interview is more practical. And we have a specially commissioned concise introduction to her work by Marvin Carlson, which looks in depth at her artistic career. And more recently we've added Anne's latest book in audio form, The Art of Resonance, which was narrated by Anne herself. And then we have a volume in our aforementioned 4x45 series called The Theatre of Katie Mitchell. I don't know if you know her work. She's an extraordinary director, and that sheds really fascinating light on Katie's work via some of the practitioners who worked with her and some of the scholars, excuse me, who've been following her work for many years. So we have Dan Rebellato and Kim Solga discussing the feminist politics of her work in the context of naturalist theatre. We have Alex Eales, who's one of Katie's key set designers, talking to Ben Fowler about his work with her plays by Beckett and Sarah Kane. We have video director Leo Warner discussing Katie's innovations in live cinema with Janice Jeffries, and we have Tom Cornford's excellent lecture on her entitled Katie Mitchell, Auteurism and the Canon. And again, a very useful, concise introduction to Katie's work by Adam Ledger. And lastly, there are two pieces by Lynn Gardner which situate Katie's work in the context of reviving the canon and actors working with directors, the latter of which is Lynn's interview with a long-standing collaborator of Katie's, the actor Michael Gould. I hope I'm not going too quickly for everyone. So Shakespeare, this is the biggest single area that we have. So what I've done is done a kind of case study look at just one play to give you, and then I've added some extra things on the end. So this is a deeper dive into one example. So I'm looking at Macbeth, and the productions you can choose from, they're all available to watch either in full or by act or even by key scene, include Gregory Duran's production for the RSC in 2001, starring Anthony Sher and Harriet Walter, accompanied by interviews with both leads and the director about the production. There is also a separate long-form interview with Harriet Walter by Shakespeare scholar and teacher Carol Rutter, called Shakespeare's Women Today, in which she talks about this production in the context of feminism and gender politics. And like all of our interviews, this is chaptered, so you can jump straight to specific sections on things like gender blind casting or language or whatever. We also have our own capture of the Everyman production in 2011, starring David Morrissey and Julia Ford, which was directed by Gemma Bodinetz. And this also has really illuminated extended analyses by the actors of the lead roles and their relationship and how to play that, plus an interview with the designer of the production, Frances O'Connor. Then we have Tara Arts production, directed by Jatinder Verma, created for the Black Theatre Live network, which features an all-Asian cast, Indian movement and music, and a very contemporary take on the play with 3 prophesying drag queens. And then there's Stratford Festival's production, directed by Anthony Cimolino in 2016, and Rupert Gould's production for Chichester Festival in 2010, starring Patrick Stewart. So those are some key productions, and of Just Macbeth, and we cover the whole Shakespeare canon. There are others, including an audio production if you want to study the text without the visuals, but those are the main ones I wanted to mention. As I mentioned earlier, we've put together some very nifty compare and contrast selections. So these look at some key scenes and speeches, such as Act 2, Scene 1's "Is this a dagger I see before me?" And they show vividly, and in less than 10 minutes in total, some of them are only 4 or 5 minutes long, the very different interpretive approaches that actors and directors have taken in each case, and how cultural representation can change so much over the decades. These also have some written guides to accompany them with lists of questions if you're looking for a primer. And then there are more eclectic and wide-ranging materials to steer towards, including a manga graphic novel of the play, if you're interested in different cultural manifestations. And then moving away from Macbeth, the other Shakespeare items I really want to mention are things like our capture of David Tennant's Much Ado About Nothing, which was directed by Josie Rourke, which is really, really lovely production, and English Touring Theatre's 2019 Othello, with accompanying essays on Elizabethan England and the Islamic world, and an intersectional analysis of Desdemona in the light of the Me Too movement, both by Jerry Broughton, who's at Queen Mary, University of London. And then there are 2 starkly different Coriolanus's, one by Robert Lepage and one by Stephen Berkoff. The Berkoff one is set in the context of 1930s fascism. And we have Deborah Warner directing Fiona Shaw as Richard II, and we have Talawa's all-black production of King Lear. We have the Donmar trilogy of all-female Julius Caesar, The Tempest, and Henry IV, with a wealth of accompanying interviews. We have Shakespearean Rehearsal, which is a wonderful series of workshops run by actor and teacher Michael Gould, with 2 actors. All 3 of them have spent a lot of time at the Globe and RSC, and the workshops look at language and poetry and performance, and they find ways to understand the texts in fine detail through an embodied, practical way of working. And we have This Island's Mine, which is a documentary about the work of flute theatre, which makes Shakespeare's plays accessible to young people with autism, in some cases quite severe autism, via drama games, which is a really fascinating project. And then last but not least, we have some fascinating interviews with Shakespeare scholars, such as Jonathan Bate, Michael Dobson, Peter Holbrook, Abigail Rogerson Woodall, and Jyotsna Singh, and many interviews with very experienced practitioners. And I think lastly, I think this is the last section, I wanted to talk about theatre design. So the first project I wanted to mention here is a series of introductory e-learning videos. It's called Key Concepts in Theatre Design, and consists of 5 10-minute videos covering set, sound, costume, lighting, and video and projection design. And they all use clips from productions and practitioner interviews on DT Plus to illustrate and introduce the key concepts. So the aim of them is both to introduce the basic concepts of each discipline and also encourage users to look in more depth at the long form materials on DT Plus through a design lens. So I think, Lisa, you're going to show a very short snippet. It's only about literally a minute and a half, which consists of a section on atmosphere and mood from the film about lighting, and the section on metaphor from the film about video and projection design. I think it may go quite slowly because of the screen sharing, but hopefully it will be all right.
Do shout if you can't hear it.
As well as simply indicating location, lighting can create atmosphere and mood, sometimes quite overtly. This is the blasted heath scene from the Almeida Theater's 2012 production of the same play, starring Jonathan Pryce. Even with such a well-known performer, the priority here is to create the mood associated with a violent storm rather than to see the actor. Although John Clark's lighting signals storm with lightning flashes, Lear himself is sporadically lit by a purple light coming from grills beneath his feet. This is a totally unrealistic light source, but creates an atmosphere of almost demonic danger and chaos. Projections don't just have to indicate locations. Here is the start of Frantic Assembly's Love Song by Abby Morgan in 2011. At various times in the play, flocking starlings are projected, sometimes mixed with still images of hands and cave paintings. It becomes clear over the duration of the play that the birds in particular are a metaphor, an image that relates to the theme of the piece. So how do these images make you feel when you look at them?
Thanks, Lisa. So the second project I wanted to mention is a series called Designing Shakespeare, which is a curated selection of content from an extraordinary audiovisual design archive from 20 years ago, which covered Shakespeare productions in the UK in the years 1960 to 2000. As the founder, Christy Carson, wrote in her essay, which we commissioned to accompany this series on DT+, it aimed to illustrate how design, an often overlooked linchpin in productions, could in fact be a valid form of Shakespeare interpretation alongside the more widely studied practices of acting and directing. So for that series, we have interviews with Ralph Colty, Sally Jacobs, who designed Peter Brook's Midsummer Night's Dream, and Nick Ormerod. And as I mentioned, Christie's wide-ranging essay about why design matters, which gives both historical context and textual analysis, and explains why design is a crucial connection between these 400-year-old texts and contemporary audiences. And that series can be seen alongside a host of other in-depth practitioner interviews with designers such as Bob Crowley and Pauline Constable on their work, their influences, and their careers. So there's loads more we could talk about, but I think that's probably enough to be going on with. So thanks very much for listening. Oh,
Thank you. Thank you for that, Talia. Thanks so much. I know the internet was not working as fast as it should have been, and you probably didn't see some slides of the content. So what I will do more is I will send you a playlist that you can share with faculty. So they have all the links to the resources that Talia spoke about and highlighted, if that would be useful for you. Yeah, perfect. Let me stop sharing my screen. Do you have any questions in regards to content or the technicalities or the navigation of the platform? Does anybody have any questions that we can support with?
I would like to say just quickly that it's awesome. It's such a real treasure. But I wonder, I'd like to toss this question whether it's only British productions. I mean, or do you have also other European, American, and I don't know,
We
the rest of the world?
absolutely do, but I'm going to let Talia jump in because, yep, she'll give you a very in-depth answer there, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, we are working really hard to make it more diverse and more eclectic. It is overwhelmingly British productions. Mm-hmm. I didn't mention that we've got an amazing production of a show called Pipeline by Dominic Morisseau. I don't know whether you know that it was at the Lincoln Centre a couple of years ago, and we've got a full-length production of that. And I commissioned an essay by Sandra Adele, who's at the University of Michigan. No, not Michigan. Anyway, Wisconsin-Madison, I think. So we are working really hard to diversify. It's actually quite difficult to do it for various reasons. but we're licensing a lot of material at the moment. I'm working, do you know Rimini Protocol in Germany?
Sure, yeah. They've been here several
Right.
times.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we're working with them. In fact, I got an email from one of them today. So we're hoping to license some of their material. I now can't think of lots of things off the top of my head, but we're having multiple conversations with a much broader range of companies than is visible on the site at the moment. And also, I only gave you a little taster of various different topics, but there are lots more.
Yeah. No, it's a major resource, you know, that both students and teachers can use. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, if you search by production companies, you can see productions from Stage Russia, you know, which are in a Russian language. And we, oh gosh, top of my head, I know it's not theatre, but we have Cineplay on here. They're film
Which is
productions.
India.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we have to be really conscious of the need to subtitle foreign language material and so on and so forth. So yeah, we're very conscious of that, and particularly world theatre, which is, you know, called world theatre, which is a real gap. I did commission an audio series called Worlds of Performance, which we had Rabbi Moore. Now my mind is going to go blank. Danny. Sorry? Oh, sorry, I thought someone was asking. Anyway, we've got Worlds of Performance, which is an audio series with interviews with different practitioners from around the world, Singapore and Hong Kong. And anyway, so there's that series. It's something that we're working on at the moment.
And it can keep the history of your search, right?
As I was saying, Drew, the development team are working on, one of the things that they are working on is enabling you to create playlists and bookmark resources.
Right.
So that will be a feature that's coming soon for you to be able to do. Yeah, so bear with us on that. I don't have a timeline. I know it's planned within 2022. The exact dates I couldn't give you at the moment, but you will, I guess, more you get communications with updates on new content and things like that. Yeah? No? Okay. Let me, if that's okay, do you want me to ensure that you
please
get...
forward it to me, and I will make sure to send it to the faculty.
Okay. Well, what I will do as well, I will send you out a pack after the call, and perhaps you could share that with people on the call, or you know, people that maybe didn't make it. But there's a sign-up link. We often have webinars as well, which teachers can come and join. The ones that we've already had are recorded, so they can access those quite freely. And so I'll send that out so teachers know where to access the blogs that we have and the webinars that we record, and get the invites as well. Yeah. Perfect. Anything else that we can support you with in terms of, you know, if you want to kind of promote an awareness internally, I'm quite happy to send you some promotional resources, if that would be useful for you.
Yeah, I have a question. I just saw the icon of applied theater and you didn't mention it. So is there any material there in the archive of applied theater, maybe around the world?
It's funny you should ask, actually, because we're launching a very big project called the Boal Collection at the end of April. And we're organizing a webinar at the moment to mark the launch of it. So I was Boal's editor at Routledge for 20 years, and I've been working with Paul Heritage, who's at Queen Mary, who runs a company called, an organization called People's Palace Projects. And Paul was working with Boal's widow, Cecilia, and his son, Julian. And we've digitized a large number of pieces from his archive, and we've curated it into a kind of collection for DT+. So that's going to be an enormous piece of work that's going to go live at the end of April. And then I'm going to create those e-learning videos that we showed you for theatre design, we're just in the middle of constructing something called Key Concepts in Theatre for Social Change, which includes a lot of the Boal material, but also has other material in it from across the site, which would broadly come under the banner of applied theatre.
You mean materials from the Boal Institute in Rio?
Yeah, but it also supplemented with other materials from across the site, which come under the same category. So like the flute theatre one that I mentioned, about which they work with autistic children, and they've devised these drama games to work with autistic children. And so that material is also in the e-learning video series.
I have another question, if I may. If I'd like to share a specific production or an interview, whatever, with my students, can I just send them a link to the particular page, or?
Yeah, absolutely. What you do is just copy the URL. So go to that specific scene, copy the URL and share that with students. As long as they are logged in to the platform prior to clicking the link, that will take them straight there. If they're not, it will just take them to the home screen. So yeah, absolutely. You just share the URL. In terms of Italia, the webinar for the Boal collection, do we have any dates in mind for that at the moment?
Yeah, it's on the 21st of April.
Oh,
and it'll be in the afternoon GMT. So I don't know what the time difference is, but it'll probably be 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the afternoon London time.
Okay, so that should work, I think.
We should have, I mean, I've sent out a whole bunch of invites. Julian Boal, Augusto's son, is going to be there. Hopefully Sanjoy Ganguly from India, someone from Mozambique and someone from Guatemala. So it's going to be quite an international panel of people, I hope.
So come and join us. I said, come and join us. I'll make sure I send the link so you can sign up to the webinars and come and join them, or at least see the pre-recorded ones. Brilliant. Well, any more questions before we depart?
No, it's been great.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great day. And
thank you very much.
With the playlist and email and some promotional resources to get you guys started. Any questions moving down the line, feel free to email me. And yeah, I'll get back to you as soon as. All right, then, guys. Well, lovely to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.